Endwalker seems like a divisive expansion. Some people are saying it's one of the best so far, while others are saying it's one of the worst so far. To me, this discourse seems to stem from boredom and the veterans running out of things to do. Sure, it's not perfect, but is it really that bad? Hello, my name is Donovan, and I've been playing Final Fantasy XIV for about 3.5 years now. I hopped aboard the train around the middle of post-Shadowbringers, so Endwalker is my first full expansion. What I want to do today is give a look at my time going through the game pre-Endwalker, go over my experience through Endwalker, and finally give my thoughts on the expansion and on the game as it stands now. However, I must issue a spoiler warning. This is my retrospective of not just Endwalker, but my journey through 14, so there will be some heavy spoilers ahead. I started my journey as an Elzen archer. I went through some changes. Arriving at the dense forest canopy of the Black Shroud, I began my adventure by immediately skipping all the cutscenes. Wait, don't go! Allow me to explain. You see, before I started 14, my friends and I were playing World of Warcraft, and in that game, unless you're a super ultra mega nerd, you skip the dialogue. I had to convince my friends to even try out 14. So, with no thoughts, head empty, I ventured into Eorzea, leaving Azeroth behind me forever. As soon as I was able to travel to Limsa, I put down my bow and grabbed a pair of daggers and never looked back. Thus, a fledgling ninja was born. A Realm Reborn took some time for me to get through, but I was enjoying my time doing it. The trials were cool and the dungeons were fun. My group loved Hawk Manor, by the way. Eventually, I made my way to the dreaded unskippable cutscene dungeons. I read the dialogue for the first time, now not having a choice, and was pretty confused. Shocking, I know. I've really only retained such devastation, but that was not my intention. I just wanted to blow through it completely head empty. After getting that Laha bread, I finally started the 100 quest journey to Heavensward, and it was such a drag. I didn't realize all the cool stuff being set up at the time, so I was drudging my way through as fast as I possibly could. I did take my first dip into that sweet Fantasia around this time, and became a female Miqo'te for a bit. I would soon take another dip to become the male Miqo'te I am today. Throughout my adventure through Heavensward, I kept hearing about how amazing the story actually is. It was mostly Zepla propaganda, honestly, but it worked. I started getting intrigued and wanted to see what the hype was about. Around the time that you first go to Azazel was the time that I started paying attention to the story. I had a lot of catching up to do, so I would watch cutscene montages and story breakdowns on YouTube to catch myself up. And yeah, the story was really good. I'm ashamed of myself for not having gone through it properly the first time. Better late than never though, and now I'm definitely not getting off this train because the story has me hooked. Stormblood was a pretty slow start, but I'm always surprised to hear that people didn't like it. The content was fun and the story, while not as fantastical as Heavensward, was still really intriguing. I really like Kugane as a city, mostly because I'm a huge dweeb, but also because it's just really nice aesthetically. It even features a jump puzzle you may or may not have heard about. Post-Stormblood is what really grabbed me if I'm being honest. Between the possible redemption of Yatsuyu and the Scions falling unconscious one by one with no indication as to why, and finally the tension-filled scene with the Emperor of Garlemald who drops bomb after bomb equally filled with truth and realizations. I couldn't stop playing at this point. I had to know what was going to happen next. Dicks out for my boy Gosetsu. He's had a hard life. Finally, I was entering the coveted Shadowbringers. I've heard great things about the story for this expansion, both online and from friends who beat me to it because they have been dirty, filthy cutscene skippers up to this point. That's the thing about this part of the story though. It holds up for those who hadn't paid attention till now, and is even better for those who have. And it absolutely lives up to the hype. The new zones were fantastic, the music was at its best, and the story just can't stop hitting. As an aside, when they revealed Graha as the Crystal Exard, I straight up thought he was me with different hair. I didn't realize he was from the Crystal Tower series up until after. I mean, just look at us. Practically brothers. I love him. Post-Shadowbringers didn't slow down either. Well, I guess the first part where you have to get Yulmore a new leader was kinda slow, but patch 5.3 was the best so far. The trial against Elidibus was one of the best so far, and the aftermath is the one moment that actually made me cry. Dicks out for my boy Graha. Oh, he's fine. Let me paint you a picture. It's the day that early access starts for Endwalker. My alarm goes off 10 minutes until the drop so I can get myself up in time to start. I get on Discord with my friends who are also up super early for the new expansion. The clock ticks to its release, and we're desperately trying to get in. Refresh after refresh, and it's not even downloading. We try all sorts of things to get it to work, but nothing is helping until it finally pushes through. The game is finally updated, and I log into my character. Except... So, Endwalker didn't have the best of launches. Its server capacity couldn't withstand the new influx of players, and Yoshi P explains that due to the pandemic, getting the parts to fix the issue was going to take some time. I think it took nearly a month for the queue times to get better. I play on Lamia, which wasn't too bad queue-wise, if I'm being honest, but my Leviathan homies had consistently 2 hours to 4 hours to log in. I didn't even get to do the first dungeon before I took a few months off from playing. There was some other stuff going on at the time, but I do think the queues did affect me a little bit. It gets hard to put aside time to play a game when I have to wait an hour to play when I work full-time and are a full-time dad. When I finally did go through the story, I couldn't stop. The story was at its best in my opinion. The dark horror of the towers are creepy, the tragedy that stems from the fall of Garlemald is gripping, the twist that was everything on the moon was crazy, and all of Elpis was enthralling. And then there was Heidelin. It is the only trial right now that you can face with an NPC party, and you know I had no choice but to do it. It was a struggle, but I eventually prevailed. There are 3 scenes that I will always remember from Endwalker. The scene in Garlemald when the commander has to admit defeat and allow his troops to seek aid from Eorzea, and you hear the Garlemald radio playing this haunting anthem in the background as the commander takes his own life. The scene where Urianger is confronted by Moonbreeda's parents who only wanted him to reach out to them so they can mourn together. And finally, the scene where you see Vana slowly walks through the answers as she bears the pain and misery of her people. To me, these are the most powerful and impactful scenes that really set up the stage for the end of the 10-year saga. And ended it I did, as I made for Ultima Thule, saw to the defeat of the Endsinger, and had my final confrontation with Xenos. Being done with the story, I can now dive into the endgame content, and there's a lot to eat in that regard. Pandemonium is a great raid story, and I love the fights. The Abyssosphere was a standout for me. Mists of the Realm also had a great story, but I found it wasn't quite as impactful. It was still cool to get some special dialogue with your chosen patron though. I'll talk more about the other endgame content in my final thoughts. The 2 years between expansions is when the most controversy happened. The world first team of both the Ultimates got caught cheating. Samurais lost their ship because they lost 10 of their kites or something like that. The raid team at Square flexed their skill too much for the community to handle for P8S. The ERP FC billboard incident, and then there was a PvP match over the Lalafell chair. I found some of it genuinely entertaining, but it got too much sometimes. Hopefully Dawntrail will be kinder to everyone. While I played through the endgame as it was released, I found that fewer and fewer of my friends were returning to the game. It's like the last credit sequence of Angel Beats where everyone disappears from the picture one by one. These years were hard on all of us, and there was some severe burnout that happened, plus some endgame drama. That's a story unto itself, should the participants be willing to share it. I never attempted any savages or extremes with the exception of one. The Voidcast Dias extreme was the bane of my existence for a solid 2 months. No matter how perfect I played, I just couldn't find a group that could clear it. Around that time, I hopped on to Sly the Fox's birthday stream because he wanted to highlight content creators and the community for his birthday. Sly, if you're watching, I still really appreciate that, man. Also, I did eventually get that clear. Finally, I joined a static. We called ourselves the Aether Pulse Savant, or APS. I came up with the name, by the way. I derived it from a media company I'm making called Ethereal Dawn Productions, which is another thing. I had planned on making a machinima using Final Fantasy called Full Party. I still have all sorts of ideas for it, so maybe I'll see it to fruition eventually, but for now it's on the back burner. My experience post-Endwalker had a lot of ups and downs, but it's something I still appreciate. But I've yammered on for long enough, so let's get into my actual thoughts on the actual content of the game. First, job design. Now I only know how to play ninja, so I can really only speak on that one. Endwalker saw to the removal of ninja's only damage over time move and added a badass Chidori gap closer. I actually find the rotation in Endwalker to be more comfortable than that of Shadowbringers. Giving us a 2-minute raid-wide buff and a 1-minute personal buff was a good move, I think. Also, the additional AoE damage is very welcome for the dungeons. Speaking of which, the dungeons for Endwalker were super cool with some of the best music as always. Thanks, Token. The Fell Court of Troy is a personal favorite, mostly because of the dark atmosphere and delightfully haunting music. The trial saw to some new, innovative ideas, Barbaricha and Rubicante especially. There was some discourse over the difficulty or lack thereof in the Alliance raids, and I kinda get it. Previous Alliance raids were more difficult, but these 3 are still pretty hype, Euphorstein especially. Endwalker also added some new unique dungeons called Variant and Criterion. Variants are dungeons that let you choose different paths to change the bosses that you fight and the mechanics for said bosses. These are really fun, and I'm so happy to see that they're going to continue making more. Criterion is high-end content for 4-man teams using the theming of the variant dungeons. I don't have experience with these, unfortunately. The content I probably spent the most time in is Island Sanctuary. It was believed to be a Harvest Moon, Stardew Valley type game mode, but it quickly boiled down to spreadsheets and automatizations. I still enjoy it though. The story is legit really cute, and getting to interact with all the side characters is always welcomed. I ended up skipping the Arcasadara quest cutscenes, so I can't speak on those, but I absolutely love the Omnicron and Lapra storylines. Both are really touching and strangely relatable, and the final quest with the race between all three tribes was really riveting. PvP got a huge rework in this expansion with the redesign of all the actions, the new game mode called Crystalline Conflict, and the addition of series and seasons with rewards that tied to them. Square made an effort to revitalize the PvP community, and I'd say it really paid off. The final thing I want to talk about is the relic weapon. This time around, the relic weapons are tied to Hildebrand, and so you had to get caught up on the storyline in order to get a chance at the relic. I skipped through all those cutscenes to get my relic as fast as I could, but I do plan on going through it with the New Game Plus feature. The relics are super easy to get after that. You just fork over 1500 uncapped tombstones and you're good until the next tier unlocks. This makes getting multiple relics fairly easy, but it took a lot of the grind out that the community thought the game desperately needed. I like the look of the weapons too. The designs are great and the added effects are cool. A far cry from what people thought we were going to get with Hildebrand weapons. I love this game and I probably always will. It's been there for me through the best and worst of times, and I'll always cherish those memories. I really don't think Endwalker is as bad as a lot of people make it out to be, but I'm also seeing it through greener eyes in them. As I look into Dawn Trail, I can't help but feel excited for the future. I can't wait to set sail and explore the new world with my fellow Warriors of Light and see what the fuck is up with Solution 9. Those have been my thoughts, so now tell me yours in the comments below. I want to make more videos like this, so please share this around with everyone you know. Every view counts. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.